Welcome to How to Run Profitable Retreats. I am Leni Cavazos, retreat strategist and host of the show for coaches, entrepreneurs, and transformational leaders who want to design retreats that actually make money. If you've ever put your heart into a retreat only to walk away exhausted or worse, broke, you are not alone. This podcast is here to change that. Each week, I'll bring you stories, strategies, and expert insights to help you create meaningful, transformational retreats that also support your business, your lifestyle, and your bottom line. Let's make your next retreat not just powerful, but profitable. Hello, welcome back to another episode of How to Run Profitable Retreats. I'm your host, Leni Cavazos, and I'm so excited to have with me here today, Leni Comfort. And I am so excited to be talking about this because she's an experienced designer. And this is something that I truly believe that is so important when we're putting retreats together. So I'm so excited to have her bring all her knowledge for all of you who are listening to this to get a little bit more ideas on what it means and why it is so important to actually design the experience inside of your retreat. She is an educator in the event industry where she merges strategic design methodologies with positive psychology. So this is something that really called me to you, Julie. Really bringing not just, an experience is fun. It's about how we can embed, positive psychology and create an answer. It's not just an experience, it moves to a place of transformation. Right?
Exactly.
Oh, I am so excited to have you here. Welcome.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
All right. So today we're going to be talking about the ROI of Comfort, how guest-centered design drives referrals and word of mouth. So tell me a little bit about this, Julie. What do you consider like the ROI of Comfort?
Yeah, so I think the important thing with a retreat especially is that you have people that are coming in with really high expectations. They are expecting transformation. I think a lot of people go into retreats kind of expecting to have their life changed. So there's already a really high bar. And I think that puts a lot of pressure on retreat hosts to not just meet that bar, but to actually surpass it and deliver something that's like really transformative. And it comes down to creating an experience that where people feel really seen, really that they have the space and are held in being able to kind of have this transformation. And I think the risk is that if you don't create an environment for this to unfold, that's what actually people talk about. People really share the negative experiences, and that can really tarnish your reputation. It can really hurt your business. I've definitely seen some trash talking, I guess, in some Facebook groups about experiences where just the bare minimum kind of needs were not met. Like food wasn't provided, transportation wasn't provided. And that's kind of the bare minimum of like making sure that you are responsible for people for this time period that you're hosting them, and that you are really creating not just comfort, because of course comfort is really important, but that you're, and again, you can't meet every single need that people have, but that you're really taking into account what are people's needs coming into this space? How can I not just meet them, but exceed their expectations and really deliver something that's like something they've never experienced before, and meet all of their needs, make them feel comfortable, make them feel welcome, and just provide an experience that is transformative.
I love this. So let's just play with this concept a little bit behind it. Just like, running an event, running an experience, and running a transformational experience. If you were to give us an example of just, it doesn't have to be the whole event, but just one experience that you would, take from here and then shift it and, bring behavior, like positive psychology, and then shift it into a transformational experience. What would you do if you were to, change maybe something that someone else puts out there, and you come and you tell them your method and you're like, okay, this is the way that we would add a couple of things.
Yeah, well, there's a couple principles that I kind of adhere to when I'm designing an experience with the intention of being transformative. And I think probably the number one mistake that I see people make is not just meeting people's needs, but not allowing people to have enough autonomy within the experience. So I think sometimes experiences are over designed and things are over orchestrated and every single detail is sort of planned. And there's not enough space for the participants to play an active role in creating the experience that unfolds. If things are too planned and too structured, there isn't that room for things to organically transpire, and people move at different paces. And so I think one of the most important things to consider when designing a retreat experience is that there's space for autonomy, that people can move through the experience in a way that suits them, that they can move at their own pace, that they can opt in or opt out of things that feel comfortable or uncomfortable to them, and that they can engage with the content in a way that feels right to them. And I think that sometimes people are so set on delivering certain content in a certain way that they forget to kind of leave some room for the participants to co-create the experience as it unfolds. So I'd say autonomy is something that's really important to think about when you're designing a retreat.
Yeah, I hear you. I've seen retreats where people are pushed to go to all the experiences, right? Even if they don't feel comfortable. I see it a lot when it comes to activities, sometimes like ice baths or sweat lodges, where there's a
Hmm.
little bit of even like shaming if you do
Yeah.
not participate.
Yeah, exactly. And I think also we need to think about how we're bringing people into the experience. Is it an invitation or does it feel forced? Because sometimes if things feel like rules, people have a natural inclination to sort of rebel against things. Like if everybody else is doing it, I'm not going to do it. I want to do something different. And so when there are things like that that are pushing people outside of their comfort zone, there needs to be it needs to feel like an invitation and it needs to excite them rather than feeling like you have to do this, it's forced on them.
I like it. And I usually have this kind of phrase that I think everyone who's listening to this can take away with you is you're invited to attend all the sessions. We highly recommend that you do, but if there's one that you don't feel like doing,
Hmm. Hmm.
it's it's your choice, right? You
Hmm.
get to choose. At the same time, if you have questions about it, and because sometimes we do need to push ourselves out of our comfort zone, and as humans, we tend to sometimes just, oh, we find resistance somewhere and we just try not to do it. And we don't understand what's happening in our subconscious that is taking us to make that decision or lead that way. So opening the space for them to come to you and ask you and tell you, hey, I'm not feeling very comfortable about this activity. Can we talk about it?
Yeah. It's funny that you mentioned that because I have kind of a mixed feelings about this idea of pushing people outside of their comfort zones. And I think when we talk about growth happening sort of beyond your comfort zone, it almost makes comfort feel like a bad thing, like you shouldn't be comfortable. And while I see that mindset and I know where it comes from, I actually don't necessarily agree with it. I think you can be comfortable while pushing yourself. And again, this is where I think autonomy is important, is that, and people have different needs. And one of the ways that I sort of came into this work is I would go to a lot of conferences and sort of big events, and I'm neurodivergent and I'm also very introverted. And I would find a lot of these events are sort of organized by neurotypical extroverts, and the needs of neurodivergent people weren't necessarily taken into consideration. And so this is obviously a very specific subset of people that I'm talking about, but when you're coming at it from your own filter of how you might have experienced this work that you're sharing, how you might have experienced it when you first came across it. Other people might experience it in a completely different way based on their own experience of the world. And so, again, it's sort of giving people the space to engage in a way that feels right to them. And yeah, you don't want to make it too comfortable because you do have to push yourself a little bit in order to grow and have that transformation. But I think a big part of experience design is creating the environment and designing the environment and removing a lot of the friction. If you can remove a lot of the friction and the things that give people resistance, then they will come and bring their best selves and like engage in a way that is right for them. And they will then have the transformation
Yeah.
that they need to
Yeah, I
have.
think this comes also from, having this piece of education, like educating the audience,
Hmm.
the retreat attendees when they're coming into the space of, okay, so this is this activity, and sometimes, at least for me, right, and everyone has different ways, but sometimes I do need a logical explanation for my brain to accept it and be, I surrender. Yes, I'm gonna go to this experience, whatever it comes through. I might not know what it is, right, but I need this logical part, even though I'm very, very spiritual and
Hmm.
connected and in the transformational space. But my brain needs that, and I know myself. So sometimes I'll ask for those explanations if I'm not receiving them, or
Hmm.
I really truly appreciate it when someone takes the effort of educating you and the different layers, that is not just for the person who needs this logical explanation, but
Hmm.
maybe for the person who actually needs the softer, more emotional explanation that talks more about the subtle part of the experience.
Hmm.
So really, when you're
Yeah.
creating, right, taking that into account.
Yeah, and that reminds me of another sort of experience design pillar, which is anticipation, and thinking about, okay, how can I build anticipation about what's to come and communicate the value of maybe of what's going to come without giving too much away. And it can be a difficult balance to kind of find, but that is something to really think about. It's like, okay, I want to leave some room for surprise. I don't want to tell everybody what exactly to expect, but you still have to tell them enough to get them to enroll in whatever is coming, especially if you're going to be pushing them a little bit.
Oh yes, yeah, I totally agree. Like really anticipating the guest needs
Hmm. Hmm.
beyond your own. And I do see this happening a lot in the retreat space. Simply, well, I see a couple of things when we're always thinking about retreats. First of all, usually a lot of people who are hosting retreats do not have a bit like business background, or
Hmm.
they don't they it's not that they don't want to, but their priorities in the transformation. So most of your energy is there, right? So it's like
Hmm.
I want people to get the transformation, and the other parts can come a little bit of in the background of the
Hmm.
conversation. And I mean, nothing wrong with it, but we need to take care into consideration everything else. And when we do not have usually prior event experience, that's another thing that I tend to see, because we people tend to pack up their schedules, right? Start at 6 a.m., finish at 10 p.m., no time to breathe in between. And there will
Yeah.
be some people that love that, right? Maybe the type A personality, go-getters, give me as much as I can take. I am here to just, push, 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 push. And there's other people like me that
Hmm.
we don't want to wake up at 6 in the morning. I wake up early every day to go to work, right? To do my job. And I want to, I take retreats as a place for me to recharge and, restore. So if you give me a schedule like that, I am
Hmm.
not going to show up for the 6 a.m. session, even if it's the
Yeah.
most amazing session of the day, simply because my goals and what I expect from a retreat are my own.
Yeah. And that brings up another point too, which is that people need time for reflection and integration and to allow things to land. And if everything is kind of so structured that there aren't these sort of times in between where you can reflect on what it is that you're learning and doing, then it won't really integrate into your being as you kind of take this work, beyond back into your life. You need that time to sort of reflect and process everything. And also, I think it's really important when you're designing a retreat that you think of the energy of the timeline as having ups and downs. You don't want to have this kind of constant high energy level that will drain people. And also, you kind of need these sort of low moments to sort of amplify the high moments because they will have a bigger impact if there's more quiet moments before and after. It kind of creates this wave of highs and lows. And I think people are afraid to bring the energy down too much. They're afraid of there being kind of boredom or inertia. And I understand that, but having those kind of lower energy moments really allows there to be this kind of peak moment for the high moments.
Yeah, there needs to be a balance. And I
Hmm.
completely see where this comes from, usually when I see it with retreat leaders, because they feel that if they don't pack the schedule, then the value is not there.
Hmm. Hmm.
And the value is in the overall experience, not just on the
Hmm.
individual pieces of the retreat.
Hmm. Yeah. And the other thing that I think is really important is another reason I think people attend retreats is to meet other people. And I think we take for granted when we bring a group of people together, like obviously if everybody's joining, they probably have something in common. We're going to bring all these people together. They're going to sort of naturally just gel and get along. But actually what I find in my event experience is that people need help kind of building those connections, and we need to remove the friction, but I think we also need to build in ways to sort of help people connect that feel really authentic and allow people to get past the small talk very quickly. People want to do that, but to do it on their own can feel very risky. So I think it's important to kind of design in ways for people to connect, whether that's matching people ahead of time so they have time to maybe build some connections before they show up so that when they're coming into the space, they already know someone. Or, maybe there's some kind of arrival ritual that helps people get to know one another. Or there's a wall where everyone has filled out a little questionnaire and there's a picture of them and you can reference it and learn things about people that gives you an organic icebreaker to talk to people. But it is important to remember that when people are coming to a retreat, one of their goals is to connect with other people and feel like a part of a community. And we need to really put intention into how we bring the group of people together and not just leave it up to them to do the work to make the connections themselves.
I like this. Could you give us maybe an example of something that you found that it's great for people? Like, I don't want to call it an icebreaker, but maybe we call it an icebreaker. For people to actually connect inside of retreats that you've seen that works very, very well.
Mhm. So personally, like I really hate kind of traditional icebreakers where you have to like go around a circle and say like something interesting about yourself. That's like my worst nightmare, or any kind of like improv exercise or something. I hate stuff like that. I would much rather connect in small groups. And some other things that I've seen work really well is if you're going to have name tags or something like that, having sort of an informational name tag. So it's not just your name, but it's something about you that becomes an organic icebreaker. Like, and this could be information that you get about people before they come, or people when they arrive can make their own name tag and they put a certain sticker or symbol on it or something that communicates like, this is a topic you can talk to me about. I've seen that work really well. Um, and then I've also seen, I've done things where you're kind of maybe randomly matched with another person. Like at an event I did recently, people chose a name of another person. And by the end of the 3-day event, they had to dedicate a song to that person. And so over the course of the 3 days, they were sort of invited to get to know a little bit about that person so that when you chose a song, it felt very personal to them. And then at the end of the event, you have this sort of special connection with that person that chose a song for you and also for the person that you chose a song for. So you kind of have these two connections of like, you have this special thing with them. And then if you want to take it even further, we made the playlist and shared that with everybody. So everybody gets to see everybody else's songs and it becomes an extension of the event, a way to sort of prolong the experience and gives them this already nostalgic feeling of having been a part of something.
Yeah, that is fun. And it does not feel like it's so much effort, right?
Yeah,
It doesn't
exactly.
feel like, oh my gosh, now I need to go get to know two people, right? I'm not an
Yeah.
introvert, but if I were an introvert, I would be like, oh, now I need to go talk to people and like intentionally learn more about them. And I might feel like the pressure of, oh my gosh, now I need to do this for them, right? So I think this is a fun way on how it can be just interactive, fun, low pressure.
Hmm.
Nothing is going to happen if You know, you don't choose the perfect song.
Exactly.
It's about, you know, paying attention, and it's about building connections. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And another event we did a really fun thing on the last day. It was this children's game that I had played once as at a child's birthday party, where you walk into a room and there's all this web of string, and it's just like fills the entire room, and everybody gets the end of a string. And at children's parties, the idea is you get to the end of your string and there's a little gift or a prize at the end. But what we did was we had the strings connect to another person. And so they got to play this game, and it brought out this kind of childlike playfulness. And also the string was red, and it tied back to the story that we had told earlier about this Asian legend. It's called like the red thread of fate that connects you to someone that you're destined to meet, kind of all tied together. And so when they got to the end of their string, and it was really funny because, you know, you have like 15 people in this really small room and they're climbing over each other, and it created this real playfulness and aliveness that was really wonderful. And then at the end, they're matched with another person. And then they had to write a note to that person about why they thought that they were destined to meet them at this retreat. And they put them in these little sealed red envelopes, and they weren't allowed to open them until they were on their way home from the retreat. And I got really, really incredible feedback on this because people really enjoyed the note writing and the note getting, you know, and you realize that sort of tangible note exchanges is not something we do that often anymore, and it felt really special and precious. And it also became a memento of the time, in addition to sort of building these connections. So I think there's like really fun, silly, playful ways that you can build connection. It can be, of course, more serious, but I just think the important thing is to design it, is to build it in, and to not leave it to chance and not leave it up to the participants to have to do the work of building their own connections, especially if they're in some kind of transformational environment where that's already taking up a lot of energy and a lot of headspace. It can feel quite draining to then, on top of that, have to like be trying to make friends.
Oh, yes. And I think also depending on the retreat itself and the energy of the audience, you can tailor those experiences. I am not the most competitive person out there, okay? I am more into like, oh, wonderful. People are just, you know, saying things about me, more attention to me. Great. But a lot of people are super competitive, and and I love it. It drives me when I love to be surrounded by competitive people, because then they push me, right? So it's a beautiful energy. So I would see it if in a retreat, you have a lot of like, there's a little bit of like competition energy, right? Maybe you can create teams that they have, you know, all these kind of things. And I do that a lot in like workshops. I do this workshop about building irresistible offers. And it's so much fun because I just did it in an event. We were at San Diego. It was a retreat summit. And it was an amazing workshop because I created this little random concepts of retreats, right? Like the example that I gave for them to go build it was building a retreat for bridezillas, not just bridezillas, but bridezillas that have crazy mother-in-laws. Okay. So how could you do an irresistible offer for someone who's in that space and that scenario? And the people who came and were doing the workshop, they had different themes, right? Like a retreat of yoga, but with cats, right? All these kind of like things are really not out inside of your comfort zone. And there were teams. And with these teams, it was absolutely amazing because it created these connections, and they had to get to know each other in order to create a joint program offer, right? That joint retreat, also opening up their eyes to see that you don't need to take 6 months in order to put a concept together. You can actually sit down and collaborate and put something together in 20 minutes that you could actually go out there in the market and sell. And then they had to come, you know, they had a representative, they had a social media manager. So each person had a different role. They had to choose who was doing what. And then there was a representative, like the team leader, that came and actually presented the project at the end of the workshop. So creating these different experiences where they can create connection, you can also do it while they're learning, right? So it's not just about, oh, we need to have a lot of, you know, we call them like kumbaya moments where you're just sitting in a circle and everyone is sharing, because sometimes that's a little bit daunting for people.
Exactly.
So, right. So bringing it throughout everything that you're doing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I mean, I think the other kind of sort of key thing that I work with my consulting clients is think about how you want people to feel at different stages throughout the experience that you're creating. How do we want them to feel when they arrive? How do we want them to feel when they leave? And then think about ways to kind of build in those experiences. I went to a workshop one time. It was a couple day training, and I walked into the space, and there was nobody to welcome us, and people were already talking in little groups. And my first impression of walking into this space was intimidation. It was anxiety. It was kind of like I I didn't know who to talk to. I didn't know where to go. There was no guidance. There was no signage, nothing. And I felt a lot of anxiety of like, what do I do now?
Hmm.
And I had talked to the leader later, and I asked her, like, how do you want people to feel when they come to your training? She's like, oh, I want them to feel like energized and great. And I said, cool. So what are you doing to make sure people feel that way when they walk in the room? And she was, kind of drew a blank, um, and so I think it's important to think about how you want people to feel, but then make sure that you're doing things to deliver those feelings. If you want people to walk in and feel welcome or excited, there has to be a way to kind of deliver that feeling. Like, is there someone to greet them? Is there um, a welcoming committee? Is there a banner that says, we're so glad you're here? It can be anything. It can fit your vibe and what you're delivering. But to kind of start with those feelings and then work backwards, okay, how can we deliver that feeling and make sure that we're prioritizing how people feel?
I think this is one of the most important things that I'm definitely taking away from this conversation. I would say that I've done so many events. I mean, I've been doing events for 18 years. So it kind of comes already in automatic,
Mhm.
right? Like it's just,
Mhm.
oh yeah, like I want them to feel this way. So I did design the experience with all the touch points for people to feel that way. But if you don't have that, and this is why I think it's so important, if you don't have that practice or it's not just coming to you naturally, I don't think anyone is really telling people that this is important and you need to put an effort and energy behind it.
Yeah. Yeah, I think people focus on the logistics.
Yes.
Yeah, people focus on the logistics, the details, and the content. And then they forget to sort of think about the emotional experience that you're creating for people. And again, like with the ups and downs of the energy, you also kind of want to create ups and downs with the emotions. You want people to feel really good. You want them to feel reflective and sort of leave space for all of these different emotions to sort of coexist. And it should be a journey. It should be an emotional journey, and there shouldn't be kind of one static feeling of like, I feel good. There can be a multitude of like the most impactful, resonant experiences in life are usually a combination of different emotions. It's usually not just one emotion. It's kind of multiple emotions woven together. And so to really think about the emotional experience that you're delivering for people.
Yeah, this is so good. And something also that I really picked up from what you said that I think it's so important is the whole piece of it doesn't need to be very complicated to take people through the emotions. It does not mean now you need to do a whole big production in order for them to feel. It could be the incense, it can be the smell, right? So if you want people to rest, then maybe there's a lavender scent. So you're getting them ready to go to sleep, right? So little touch points. I remember,
Exactly.
yeah, we did one retreat that was dying to fully live. So it was a very intense retreat, talking about that, writing your own eulogy, many things, right, happening behind the scenes. But there was one night, the first night actually, where there was this meditation, like pre-recorded meditation that everyone had to listen to before they went to sleep about lucid dreaming. And the dinner, actually, we had, these mocktails that had this flower that helps you be more open to lucid dreaming. So every little thing, right, took you through the moment. And there were the instructions before. Okay, so you're gonna go to your bed and you're gonna put your headphones on and you're gonna go do this meditation, and then from there you're gonna go to sleep, and tomorrow morning you wake up and put your journal next to your bed, and you're gonna write how you felt and what you saw. And then there was the morning space for people to share if they wanted to share about their dreams and what came through, right? Becoming very intentional about what you're dreaming and what does that mean for you. And if you really think about it, it was little things.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. It sounds like a really cool retreat.
Yes, it was. It was very intense, but it was so like
Yeah.
it was so deep. And because there were
But
so
I think,
many emotions.
yeah, and I think that's like
Beginning.
comes back to that. It's like it doesn't all have to be positive emotions. People actually enjoy the more difficult emotions too. I mean, people love to watch sad movies and scary movies. We like to feel sadness and fear when there's kind of a safe container to feel those things. And we know we're not actually in danger when we watch a horror movie, but that, I think people are sometimes afraid to bring in those kind of more difficult, challenging emotions, but they really add this richness to, the emotional journey. I mean, grief can make us feel more alive, and that's what you want to create for people is this emotional journey. And
Yeah.
sense can be a big part of that as well. Like you said, smells and sounds and lighting, all of those things can kind of play into this rich experience.
Yeah, I think this is so far. I'm thinking more about this retreat because, it was a very depth, and like the depth of this retreat was so powerful. And of course, so many emotions came through. So it was a couple, there were a few, we had a big number of facilitators actually because of that for this retreat, because we wanted to make sure that there were like constant check-ins with the attendees to see how they were dealing with the things, what was happening, right? So there was a lot of intentionality behind walking the journey with them,
Mm-hmm.
not just leaving them to, okay, now you went through this deep moment, time for lunch.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that intentionality is what makes people feel really cared for. And if people feel really taken care of, and if they feel really seen, I think that's another kind of key thing is if you can personalize it to the extent that people feel really seen and valued, those are the experiences that people talk about in a positive way. Those are the ones that they're going to tell other people, like, oh, you have to do this, and the opposite is true too. Like if people feel really unseen and uncared for, they're going to talk about it in a negative way. I mean, it was such a small thing to walk into that space and not be welcomed, but it's, it stuck with me in a negative way. I'm talking about it now because I just felt so unimportant in that moment. And that's not how you want people to feel when they're coming into an experience that you're creating for them.
Yeah, and that's the first impression. I mean, if you're not going to take care of
Exactly.
the rest, you take care of the first impression and the last impression.
And the last, exactly.
Right? At least if in the middle, it's kind of like, okay, whatever. But at least the beginning, right? Because it is also about feeling safe.
Yeah.
I've had this experience as well, walking into events and whatnot, and asking myself, so what do I do now? Where do I go?
Yeah.
Maybe there's
Yeah.
no signage
Exactly.
or, like simple things are like, do I go here first? I remember I went to this event in Florida and there were two reception desks. They had the completely different tasks and you had to go to one first and then the other one. But then I went first to the other one because I didn't know there was, step one and step two. There was nothing that guided me through that journey. So I went there and I'm like, okay, all right, well, I'm going to go to the other one. And I was like, all right.
Yeah.
There's kind
I
of
mean,
little things that make a difference.
yeah. I think what makes an experience really stick with us and makes it really memorable is how far it deviates from our expectations. And so it can deviate from our expectations in a bad way in that it like really falls short of our expectations and that will stick with us and in a way that you don't want it to stick with people, or it can exceed expectations. And so obviously I have a saying like you want your event to be memorable by design, not disaster, because people remember when something goes really wrong. And it's fine. Like things happen sometimes. There are things that might happen that are beyond your control. And of course, it always kind of depends on how you handle it, how people will remember that. People can get past a lot of things if they feel like you're on top of it. But I think the important thing is that when you're designing an experience for people, you want to intentionally exceed their expectations so that it sticks with them, it resonates with them. They're going to remember it forever for the right reasons because it was like, wow, this was like a once in a lifetime experience. And I felt really cared for. And I felt like there was so much intention put into this. Those are the kind of experiences that are really going to stick with people and that they're going to talk about and want to share.
Mm. So if there were, I know you have this guide that you're gonna be giving everyone who's listening to this about, like 15 things you need to use to really design an experience, right? What would be like if you can tell us like maybe like your favorite out of those, the one that you enjoy the most?
Yeah, yeah, I know exactly which one it is, and it's magic. If you can create magic for people, they will never forget it. And this can be true of everything, not just retreats. I mean, you have people over for dinner and you create a little magical moment. That's what's going to really stick with people. And the thing about magic is, I mean, especially if you have a natural setting, you can kind of cheat and use nature a little bit. But like things like fire, the stars, a beautiful view. You can use it to kind of, the sunset, you can kind of use it to create this kind of magical moment for people where you combine different things in a moment that feels really synchronistic and magical. And I think what's missing from a lot of our lives nowadays is because so much of our lives and our engagement with other people happens online and digitally, we're missing these kind of moments of synchronicity where things just sort of feel like magical, like they just sort of happened. But you can orchestrate those moments. You can create magic for people. And I think those are the things that like really stick to the bones. Those are the things like people will remember as like, oh, it just felt magical. So that's my favorite design pillar is thinking about how you can deliver a little moment of magic. It can just be something small that feels really special. And I can give a quick example of this. I did a retreat last year that was on it was on Halloween. So on Halloween night, we had a little toast about the origins of Halloween, and everybody wrote on a piece of paper something that they wanted to. This is a transitional time, something they wanted to leave behind, a limiting belief, something like that. You wrote on a piece of paper, and we put them in these envelopes and sealed them. And also in the envelopes was this magic powder that when you throw it on the fire, it makes the fire change color. They didn't know it was in there, so they have these little notes that they're in the envelopes, and we all threw them on the fire at the same time, and we were all releasing these things, and we told them all to kind of stare at the fire and meditate on this thing that they're releasing. And as they're looking at the fire, it starts to change color, and they didn't see us put anything on the fire, so it really created this magical moment of like everyone's looking at each other like, is this really happening? Like, do you see that? Am I imagining this? And it really, it was such a small thing, it was like this little powder that you put in the fireplace, and it created this magical moment that it was really cool.
Oh my gosh, I love it. I mean, I was already thinking I need to ask her for an example of what she considers, like something she's done that is a magical moment. And this is really a magical moment. It's
Yeah, and it was easy to
unexpected.
produce, right? I mean, it was, there weren't fireworks. It was literally just some powder and some envelopes and a fire. It was like inexpensive and easy to produce, and I think it really stuck with people.
Yeah, and you brought up something very, very important is that creating a magical moment or designing an experience does not mean you need to be spending tens of thousands of dollars.
Yeah, exactly. It's
It's
just
not
about
about the money.
intention. It's about intention and
Um,
thoughtfulness. Mhm.
I mean, it makes me think of so many events that I've done that, we created these like mini magical moments. Like,
Mhm.
so when I was working at Ritz-Carlton, I designed this winter wonderland. It was a whole month of experiences, right? So we flew in ballerinas from Ukraine and they were dancing to the Nutcracker and they would show up in the different restaurants. But then we had these little treats for kids, right? So like the the chefs that did this like small gingerbread cookies. So they would go dancing, and then the restaurant will bring out some cookies for the kids, right? Like these little things and touches. And it was just
Totally.
magical, right? Like you're drinking your
Love
tea or
that.
coffee, and then suddenly ballerinas are showing up, and they're, the music starts playing, and it's almost like you're in the theater, but you're in a restaurant.
Yeah. I love that.
Yeah. I mean, that was a larger production, right? It was a whole month. We made it snow for New Year,
Yeah.
right? Like it was a different, in a different level for sure. But those are the little details. If you have, music coming alive, like you curate
Yeah.
the playlist for the dinner based on what you energy and emotions you want to be creating. That's simple. People will
Exactly.
notice.
Yep. Yep.
Oh my gosh, Julie, this was absolutely amazing. So everyone, remind us the name of your guide.
It's called Make It Epic, and it's 16 design pillars to design more transformative experiences. And each pillar comes with a couple questions to kind of ask yourself throughout the planning process if you're hitting the pillars. And you don't need to, use all 16 of them for every experience. You can just choose a few that kind of resonate with you, but they just give you some guidelines on how to design more transformative experiences.
Ooh, I love this. Well, everyone, you can get the link in the show notes. Don't miss getting your copy of this, because you heard about one pillar. And I am sure all your brains are already turning, and you're asking yourself, oh my gosh, how could I implement this? So this guide is really going to help you take it to the next level. So you really take care of your clients, of the people coming to your retreats, those people who trusted you with their transformation, with their journey, with their time, with their money. So make it worth it for them. I am so, so excited. Julie, thank you so much for being here today.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I really enjoyed this.
It was such a pleasure. And for everyone who's listening, if you like this episode, make sure you follow us and maybe share it with a friend who could really benefit from learning more about designing your experiences. And I'll see you all next week.